welcome. In today's video, I'll be making 3 dresses from 1953 with my special guest star, Scarlett here. This will be a vlog style video as I just walk you through kind of the basic steps of making each 3 garments. And the kick though is that all of these garments I made using pattern drafting, for I don't have any of the actual patterns with me. So all of my pattern shapes and construction details are gleaned from the front illustration and the back pattern diagram for each pattern. So I hope you enjoy the video. Bye! Here is the finished draft of my first dress. It has kimono sleeves, princess seams, as well as this neckline detail, and a gored circle skirt. And I'm going to make this dress out of this fabric right here, which is an forest green, which is a forest green cotton twill, which needs to be ironed. The first step is to cut all those pieces over there out of this fabric, and I will see you again once I have the skirt ready to be assembled. Before I start on the skirt assembly, I just needed to serge all of my pieces. These are my pockets here. I cut the main body of the pocket out of some muslin just because my cotton twill is rather thick and I didn't want like 4 layers of it at the waist. Because how I do my pockets is that I do them like the Victorian style, how this part of the pocket right here is attached to the waist seam, and so whatever in the pocket doesn't pull it down like this and pull the skirt out of shape. So here are my 2 sets of pockets for either side of the skirt. And here is the skirt all cut out, as well as the bodice and everything pertaining to that. And I just need to iron and serge all my skirt pieces. Then I can get to assembly. Here is the skirt after it has been ironed and serged. I have my front 2 panels here have been sewn together, and the back 2 panels here. You see though how my center back seam is coming apart a little bit? That's because maybe about 6 inches or so is actually sewed to the basting seam, because I'm going to seam rip that when it comes time to insert the zipper at center back here. Now the next step is going to be to insert the pockets. And here is one of my pocket pieces right here, and this is the side seam here. And I'm going to sew this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then iron that open here. So I am choosing my song to play for my next step as I'm sewing in these pockets here. And as I turn around to get my pieces to sew together, the cat, Scarlett, has claimed them as her own. So I think this is a good time for me maybe to take a little break and let her sit on all my skirt pieces here. I have been able to successfully move Scarlett because I brought out another piece of fabric and then I just transferred her over there, and she's still happy. So I can now continue still. Here is my pocket pieces all sewn now. The side seam is sewed using 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way up to right here where the pocket starts, and then 1/2 inch seam allowance of the pocket here. She needs to be ironed, it's a little lumpy, all the way up to here, which is this is the waist right here, and it is not sewn, this part, because this part is going to be folded over towards the front here, and this part right here is going to be caught once the waist seam is sewn, and that will hold the pocket and help distribute the weight of anything you put in it. Also, there's a little part of the seam that's sewn there, just so the seam is extra supported there and before the pocket opening starts. And this is how the pocket looks on the dress form. see, this is that little piece at the top there. And then the pocket opens and it's faced, and so you don't see any of that muslin. And I have my pincushion in it to show you all the stuff you can fit in the pocket. And so the next step, and the final step of making the skirt, is to attach the side front to the front and the side backs to the backs, and sew up these seams right there. I will not hem the skirt because it's a circle skirt, and some of these seams, like these seams right here, are cut on the bias, and so I want to leave the skirt to hang overnight. And then after I sew these seams right here, I'll start on the bodice. I have sewn together the facing here, as well as sewn together the two front pieces and sewn the darts in the back. The next thing to do is to sew together the shoulder seams, and then I will be attaching the facing to the bodice. I have sewn the facing on and clipped all the corners and clipped down the seam allowance and made this really nice points here. And so as you see, the center front has a V, and then it has another V, and then the princess seam goes straight up into the shoulder, and then it comes into this scoop neckline in the back here. And I also left the facing here, I left it a little exposed right here, just so I have enough seam allowance to turn in the zipper, and then I will sew down this part of the facing by hand after the zipper is installed. So I believe the last place I left you off was that I needed to sew the side seams, which I have done right here. And I have also sewn the hem of the sleeves here as well, and attach the bodice here to the skirt. I now have my zipper inserted here. And a label put in. Here is my mask, all finished here. And my covered buckle. And then here is my belt. What I did is I sewed it in half here, and I sewed it into a point. And I'm going to use this little tool here to turn this little part inside out. And then the rest of it, I will just iron the inner facing and then turn it over and sew it down. Because if I did just sew this into a tube and tried to turn it out, it's just too much of a hassle, as also the fabric is a little too thick for that anyway. Here is the belt, all done. The buckle is covered here, okay, as I get that little lint off. And then I also sewed a little bit of some fabric together as a little belt loop to enclose the excess of the belt. And you see it's just hand sewn here all the way down. And now the only step I have left is to level the hem. I don't think that it stretched out too much because this is a rather tight weave fabric. And then mark the hem, which is 1 inch, which is 1 inch. And here is the finished dress. I have a matching mask, my matching belt, the bodice, and the skirt. I am very happy with it. Let's get some close-ups here of the neckline. And here's how it looks in the back. It's a little woppy on the dress form. There. And the first dress is completed. It is now time for the second dress, made out of this lovely marigold color linen. The pattern is over there. We have our helper, Scarlet. I'm going to cut all the pieces out and then serge all the appropriate edges and talk to you again. So all my pieces have been cut out and serged, and now I need to interface my front facing, back facing, and pocket facing. And I have my interfacing here. I actually got a brand new bolt this month because I finally ran out of my bolt that I got in January of 2019. I put a date on it so I know how long it took me to get through a bolt. So 3 years it took me to get through a full bolt of interfacing for all my projects. So I'm going to interface these 3 pieces, and then I will serge them appropriately, and then I will start working on the skirt. The skirt's really cool. It has these inset pockets here, and so that's the pocket. This is the front of the skirt, and then this will be folded under like that when the pocket facing is sewn, and you'll have pockets, and they don't interfere with the hips right here and make that all bulky because it is a rather slim fitting skirt. I sewed the darts onto the back of the skirt here, as well as sewed the darts into the 2 front panels, and I'm now ready to attach the pockets. So this is the front panel of the skirt right here. It's linen. I know I need to iron it more. Here's the dart, and this is the pocket facing. And so the pocket facing is going to be sewn on that line. Then it is going to be turned like that. And this is the pocket bag, which is going to be sewn along here like that. And then everything is going to be sewn here. And then I have some notches here that the bag is going to be sewn to right here on the side seam. And then the bag is going to overlap a little bit on the waist seam, and then stitch that. Then I'll have my pocket. Here are the pockets all installed in the front part of the skirt. And the pockets I made sure are deep enough to hold my cell phone. And there won't be that pulling because this will be attached at the waist. And I also seamed the center front together as well as understitched the pocket facing, and so the pocket facing won't come out. This is how the pocket looks from the inside. We have the pocket bag, that's the interface pocket facing, and right here I just stitched a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the fabric to attach the pocket bags to the side seams. And so the next step here is to sew up the side seams here. Here is the skirt, all completed. I have an opening here for the side zipper, and I have my pockets. And the next thing I am going to work on are the sleeves. Right here. So I'm going to sew the underarm seam, put in the gathering threads for the sleeve head, and also hem the sleeves by machine. And then I will work on the actual bodice. Here are the sleeves, all sewn. Underarm seam sewn. I have the hem here, and then the gathering stitches at the sleeve head. I have now sewn the darts into the front bodice here, as well as the darts into the back bodice and the shoulder seams. And the next step is to take care of the neckline here. That necessitates having to work on the tie next. So this is going to finish off the neck edge. It is 3/4 of an inch wide with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So this part attaches to the neckline of the bodice. And this part is a tie which will form into a pretty bow at the base of the neck. And so it will be sewn like so. This part will be left open so I can turn this inside out, and this will just be turned like that and slip stitched when the time comes. I have sewn the collar to the bodice, and I sewed it with a 1/4" seam allowance, even though the neckline calls for a 1/2" seam allowance, because that facing over there, which I also sewed together, also has a 1/2" seam allowance, and I didn't want to have to worry about matching up the seam lines if the seam lines would show on the other side. So I just sewed this one with a 1/4", and then when I sew the facing on top of this here, it'll be sewn with a full 1/2" seam allowance. And here are also the ties. This is a completed tie. I've turned under this edge and slip stitched it. And this edge is not slip stitched, just to show you the difference there. So I'm going to slip stitch that edge and attach the facing here. The facing is going to be attached, matching notches, and obviously this is not going to be sewn like that. I am going to fold this over like so, and then it'll be sewn there at the neckline all the way down in here. Here is the facing all sewn on. See, this is the inside and that is the outside. I tacked down the shoulders right here, and as you can see here, the seam allowance is clipped and all ironed down there. And at the bottom of the facing here, I sewed this little extension. This is the center front seam, and so I sewed that extension. That's how it looks from that side, because these two pieces, the upper half of the bodice, overlap each other, and there is going to be 3 buttons there. And so that's why there just needs to be a little bit of overlap there. For this project, I am using covered buttons. So I have my little fabric circle here, and this is the top of the button. You see it has the shank attached to the top of the button. This is the back, and the shank, it goes on to the shank like this. That's so some other cover buttons, there's another type where the shank is attached to the back part of the button. But if that comes off, like boop, and then your button is no longer functioning because the shank came off with it. And so you're just left with a shank that's attached to your dress, and the button comes undone in the middle of the day. And so if this happened, it'll just be like that. See, this button is covered already with the fabric, but there's no, the back isn't on yet. And so if the back, for some reason, popped off, you would still have this attached to your dress. And this is how the button looks once the back is attached to it. Here are the buttons and buttonholes all sewn on here. So we got 1, 2, 3. And then I also sewed together the rest of the center front seam here. We have these sleeves all sewn in, and obviously the side seams are sewn. And our helper's back. Yes. Our helper is back, making sure everything's going okay. So the next step is I'm going to attach this bodice here to the skirt, attach a label here, and then baste, then sew the zipper. The yellow dress is now finished. I also did a fabric covered belt here and a matching mask. It's not on the dress form fully because the hem circumference is too narrow to fit over the hip to the dress form, so I just kind of pinned it on here so you guys can see it like that. And that is dress number 2, all complete. It is now time to make the third and final dress. This here is the pattern for it. The dress features raglan sleeves, this shawl collar here. Got my 2 sleeve pieces and a sleeve cuff. The skirt is just the exact same skirt pattern as the second yellow dress, And so that's all cut out and ready to be serged. Then the bodice needs to be cut out. This dress is going to be made out of this cotton corduroy fabric, maroon color. It's very pretty. Now I know I said that the skirt pattern from this dress was the same as the yellow dress. That is true, however, with one slight difference. I added a little slit to the center back of this skirt. The reason being is because this skirt, you see how it comes in here and it's a narrow hem circumference, and it's just a little difficult to get on and off in a smooth fashion. So that's why I put a little slit here. It's about 5 inches tall. And so this is how it looks. Then I am going to turn it under like this. And then when I sew the hem up like that, I'm just going to carry my hem stitching all the way here, turn, and go keep doing the hem. I would add a slit like this to the back of the skirt of the yellow dress. However, I cut the back of that skirt on a fold. And so I don't want to have to deal with that. So this one gets a slit, the other one does not. The front of the skirt is also completely done. So I just need to attach the back skirt here to the front skirt and do the hem, and then I can cut out the bodice. Here is the skirt finish with the pleat in the back here. And as you see, I have the bodice all cut out here and serged together. So the first order of business is actually to sew in the darts on the back and sew the raglan sleeves to the back of the bodice. I have sewn the darts to the back bodice and attached the raglan sleeves. And what I'm doing, as well as doing some top stitching at the raglan sleeve line there. Top stitching is on this piece, as well as this other back piece. And I need to seam them together still. Then I'll move on to the front pieces and do the same thing. Our helper is back and is modeling the finished back bodice. And here is the front bodice, same thing. It has our 2 darts, bust dart and our waist dart, raglan sleeve, and the top stitching. And the next step is to sew the shoulder seam. This is the bodice all sewn together at the shoulder seams, which is that seam right there. And I'm attaching the collar now at the neckline. I'm going to sew the neckline and clip that seam allowance. And then this is going to be sewn right sides to right sides. And then it's going to flip over like so. And then fold over like this. And then I will hand slip stitch that and finish up the neckline. And then after that, I can sew the center front seam. I have sewed the collar on and it is slip stitched here. And I have also obviously sewn the front bodice together here. And right here, I knew because from reading the back, even though I don't have the pattern with me, I knew from reading the back of the envelope that there is a button here. And so I'm going to create a little button loop out of some spare corduroy and then a little button on the inside here, or maybe even like a hook, who knows. And this hook and eyes or button and loop right there, just so this remains closed. And so when it's on the body, you don't really know that there's a slit there for ease of getting the garment on and off. I have sewn the side seams here and finished the neck opening by hand here. And I have attached the loop and just this little coconut like 1/4 inch button here. And so this will loop over that. And so from the right side, you won't see any of the closure methods, but it will still be closed at the neck. And the next thing to do is to attach the cuffs, which are right here. And then attach the bodice to the skirt. Here are the sleeve cuffs. So I sewed them right side to wrong side. So this is the right side of the bodice here. It's the wrong side of the cuff. And the reason why I did that is so the cuff is going to be turned under and hand sewn and then flipped up like this finished cuff over here. So you don't see any hand stitches over there. This is how it looks from the inside. And then I also tacked the cuff on either side of the sleeve, the front and the back, and so it will stay up in that position. And here is how the point at the shoulder seam, well, this is the wrist, but the line extending from the shoulder down to the wrist, this is how the point looks. So I got to do that to this cuff, and then attach it zipper. Here is the finished dress. It has pockets, just like the yellow one, a matching waist, a matching belt. I was going to call it a waist tie, belt. Matching mask. I sewed on the label here. And also this is the little button closure that I showed you guys earlier. That's how that works. And it has my sleeve cuff detailing here. Everything I mentioned in the video, as well as wore in the reveal, will be linked below. Thanks for watching.